Picture the toughest animal on Earth. You're probably not picturing this, a chubby thing with 8 stubby legs, smaller than a grain of salt, like a gummy bear crossed with a vacuum cleaner. And yet, you could boil it, freeze it a whisker above absolute zero, blast it with radiation that would kill you 1,000 times over, and fire it into the raw vacuum of space, and it comes back and lays eggs.
Hold on, fire it into space? An actual animal, no suit, no capsule?
Bolt it to the outside of a spacecraft, and it survived. But here's the twist. It didn't do it by being some indestructible superhero. It did the one thing you'd never expect. It switched itself off and played dead.
So what actually is it?
You almost certainly have one within arm's reach. It's a tardigrade, half a millimeter long, about the size of a full stop. Under a microscope, it lumbers about on 8 legs, which is why the naturalist who first spotted it in 1773 called it a little water bear. Some people call them moss piglets.
And they live in moss?
Moss, lichen, the damp gunk in your gutter, but also the deep sea, Himalayan peaks, Antarctic ice, hot springs. They're one of the most widespread animals on Earth. There's very likely a colony in the moss on your roof right now. And honestly, they're ordinary. A tardigrade needs a thin film of water to live. It pokes a straw-like mouth into moss and algae, slurps out the juice, lives a few months, and gets eaten by tiny worms called nematodes, and sometimes by other tardigrades.
Wait, the toughest animal on Earth gets eaten by a worm?
That's the whole puzzle. In normal life, it's soft, slow, and very edible. The superpowers only switch on when its world starts to end. When its water dries up, it doesn't fight it. It pulls in its legs, squeezes almost every drop of water out of its body, and curls into a tiny barrel called a ton. Its metabolism drops so low you can barely measure it. By some readings, you genuinely can't tell it apart from dead.
So playing dead was almost literal.
Almost. It can hold that for years. Then add 1 drop of water, and within hours it plumps back up, unfurls its legs, and walks off as if nothing happened.
But how does drying out help? If I dried out, that would be the end of me.
For most life, losing your water is a death sentence. Your delicate machinery collapses without it. So people assume tardigrades used a sugar like brine shrimp do. But it turns out they barely make that sugar. Instead, they evolve their own proteins, found in almost nothing else alive. As it dries, researchers think those proteins set into a kind of glass inside every cell, holding the fragile parts in place until water returns.
So it turns its own insides into glass.
Into a glassy solid. And once it's glass, the extremes stop being able to touch it. Almost nothing can break something that isn't chemically doing anything. Barely any liquid water left to freeze into damaging ice, barely any reactions left to disrupt. So you can chill a dry tardigrade to a whisper above absolute zero, the coldest temperature there is. You can heat it, briefly, past the boiling point of water. You can crush it under 6,000 atmospheres, 6 times the pressure at the bottom of the deepest ocean trench. Add water, and it wakes up.
Is there anything that does hurt it like that?
One thing, mostly. Radiation. Radiation's different because it smashes the animal's DNA directly, even in a dried body. And a tardigrade shrugs off a dose about 1,000 times what would kill a human. So they've got a second trick, a protein whose only job is to wrap around their DNA and shield it, like bubble wrap around something precious. Its name is perfect, Dsup, short for damage suppressor.
Bubble wrap for your DNA. And that works?
When scientists put the tardigrade's Dsup gene into human cells and hit them with X-rays, those cells took about half the DNA damage. Half. From one borrowed protein.
Okay, so this is where space comes in.
In 2007, the European Space Agency dried a batch of tardigrades into their tons and bolted them to the outside of a capsule called Photon M3, not inside. Outside, exposed to the vacuum, to cosmic rays, and to the raw ultraviolet of the sun, roughly 1,000 times stronger than the sunlight at the ground.
And they came back.
Most survived the vacuum and cosmic rays with no trouble. The solar ultraviolet was the real killer, but even then, some came home alive, the first animals ever to survive open space. Back on Earth, given a drop of water, they woke up and laid eggs that hatched.
But here's the honest part the memes leave out. That tardigrade did not live in space, and it didn't thrive out there. It was dried into glass first, switched all the way off, and it endured space the way a seed endures a hard winter, by not being active at all.
So, indestructible is the wrong word.
It really is. Scientists don't even call them extremophiles, because an extremophile actually likes those conditions. Tardigrades don't. They tolerate them by shutting down. Wake one up, drop it in a warm pond, and a hungry worm can still eat it. Its whole superpower is knowing when to stop.
And it can stop for a very long time. One tardigrade was found frozen in a lump of Antarctic moss collected in 1983. Researchers thawed it more than 30 years later, and within 2 weeks, it was crawling around and laying eggs. There's even a good chance there are tardigrades on the moon right now, spilled from a crashed lander, dried into glass, waiting for water that will never come.
The toughest animal alive isn't tough the way we imagined at all.
Not even slightly. It doesn't overpower the universe, it waits it out. So one for the comments. Where's the strangest place you'd bet a tardigrade is quietly surviving right now? Until then, stay curious.
If you enjoyed that, subscribe for more and stay curious.